The Arado Ar-234 Blitz, produced by the German aircraft manufacturer Arado, was the world's first operational turbojet-powered bomber, seeing service during the final years of the Second World War. The most prominent use of the aircraft was the repeated attempts to destroy the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen between the 7th and the 17th of March 1945. The Ar-234 was produced only in small numbers, however. Despite the popular belief it was not the only jet bomber project of the Luftwaffe during the war. Another aircraft manufacturer, the Junkers Corporation, also intended to provide the Luftwaffe with a bomber that could avoid interception by outrunning enemy fighters. The Junkers Ju-287 had to develop a speed of 800 km per hour and accommodate up to 4 tons of bombs. The swept-forward wing was suggested by the project's head designer Dr. Hans Wack as a way of providing extra lift at low airspeeds, necessary because of the poor responsiveness of early turbojets at the vulnerable times of takeoff and landing. A further structural advantage of the forward-swept wing was that it would allow for a single massive weapons bay in the best location, the center of gravity of the plane, with the main wing spar passing behind the bomb bay. The same structural requirement meant the wing could then be located at the best aerodynamic location, the center of the fuselage. Prior to the assembly of the first Ju-287, a Heinkel 177 was modified in Prague to examine the technical characteristics of this single large bomb bay design. The first and second prototypes were intended to evaluate the concept. Both were assembled from the fuselages of the He-177A03, the tail of the Ju-188G2, main undercarriage and nose wheels taken from shot-down B-24 Liberators, all of which were fixed to lower weight and complexity, and equipped with spats to reduce drag. 2 of the Jumo 004 engines were hung in pods under the wings, with the other 2 mounted in nacelles added to the sides of the forward fuselage. The Ju-287 had been initially intended to be powered by 4 Heinkel 011 engines, but because of the development problems experienced with that engine, the BMW 003 was selected in its place. The second prototype would have had 6 engines. Flight tests began on August 8, 1944, with the aircraft displaying extremely good handling characteristics, as well as revealing some of the problems of the forward-swept wing under some flight conditions. The most notable of these drawbacks was wing warping, or excessive in-flight flexing of the main spar and wing assembly. Tests suggested that the warping problem would be eliminated by concentrating greater engine mass under the wings. This technical improvement would be incorporated in the subsequent prototypes, with under-wing engines moved forward under leading edge as a mass balance. 17 test flights were undertaken in total, which passed without notable incident. Minor problems, however, did arise with the turbojet engines and the booster units, which proved to be unreliable over sustained periods. This initial test phase was designed purely to assess the low-speed handling qualities of the forward-swept wing, but despite this the V-1 was dived at full jet power on at least one occasion, attaining a speed in the medium dive angle employed of 660 km per hour. After the 17th and last flight in September 1944, the first prototype was transferred to the Luftwaffe's primary evaluation and test center at Rechlin for further tests. The same month the Ju-287 program was shelved to save resources for the jet fighter programs. However, in March 1945, for unknown reasons, the Ju-287 program was restarted, with a requirement for mass production of the jet bomber as soon as possible. This production was not realized. The Junkers factory was overrun by the Red Army in late April 1945. Before long, the Junkers Ju-287V2 had been almost completed, waiting for its engines to be fitted, and construction of the third prototype had reached 90% completion. All aircraft were destroyed by the personnel at the Luftwaffe test base in Brandes to avoid capture by Allied forces. Wack and his staff were captured by the Red Army and taken to the Soviet Union, and remnants of the second prototype, especially the wings, were brought to the Soviet Union. Wack was sent to Moscow in 1946 together with Brunolf Bada, another German aeronautical engineer. WAC were responsible for further development, with Bata exercising overall supervision. Under WAC and Bata, work continued on developing the Junkers Ju-287 jet bomber with its characteristic forward-swept wings, now renamed as the EF-131, although progress was hampered by the Soviet refusal to allow the German engineers near the military airfield which used to test the prototypes. In September 1948 the machine was completely ready to fly. On October 5 during the second flight, some defects in engine operation were discovered. In 1949 the engines were replaced and flights went on. On May 24 plant testing was completed. The aircraft reached a speed of 900 km per hour and range of 2,000 km. For some reason no official testing was conducted. Instead, in May 1948 Bata was tasked to convert the plane into a long-range reconnaissance aircraft. To obtain the required 3,600 km range the aircraft was fitted with new more fuel-efficient engines. In addition, the wingspan was increased from 20 to 22 meters and external fuel tanks were mounted on the wing tips, thus increasing total fuel capacity to 14,000 liters. The aircraft was armed with two remotely operated gun turrets with 23 mm paired cannon. The aircraft was fitted with equipment for performing day and night reconnaissance placed in the forward part of the cargo bay and aft fuselage. The first flight was made on October 12, 1949. On October 20 the aircraft took off for the second time. Both flights were interrupted due to excessive wing vibration and the aircraft was returned to the plant. Test flights resumed the next spring, after structural changes were made. However, testing was stopped after the second flight on March 24 because the wing buffeting continued. On July 18, 1950 all work on the aircraft was stopped by government decree. By the time the decree was issued, the aircraft had been built and partially ground tested. That was the last aircraft with a sweep forward wing in the USSR. The other principal project of Bata's team of involuntary expatriates was the OKB-1150, a jet bomber on which serious work began in 1948. The design incorporated innovative ideas on materials and design. As with the earlier project, progress was hampered by the inconsistent nature of support from the Soviets in obtaining materials and permitting the German expatriates the freedom necessary to develop and test the aircraft effectively. By 1951, the OKB-1150 had been developed into a heavy bomber with a range around 1,500 kilometers and a bomb capacity around 600 kilograms. But in 1952, this project, too, was abandoned, as resources were again reprioritized. After a period of uncertainty, in December 1953 WAC and Bata persuaded the Soviets to permit them to develop the abandoned OKB-1150 bomber into a world-class jet-engine passenger aircraft. Holding the German aeronautical engineers in a village north of Moscow made less sense once the decision had been taken to lift the ban on aircraft manufacture in East Germany with effect from 1955. In 1955, Brunolf Bata relocated to East Germany and joined the country's ruling Socialist Party. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and to make sure you don't miss my future work, please make sure you are subscribed to my channel and press the bell notification button. Thank you and see you in the next video.